देखते हैं, चेक करके अगर वहां से चला जाएगा ना। नहीं चला तो इसे को रखने क्या वो स्लिप मोड में जा रहा है ना, वो टाइमिंग खत्म, स्लिप मोड का टाइमिंग खत्म कर दो। सब ठीक है। यही ना छोटे वाला आपके पास है, पॉकेट में मेरे पास पेन नहीं है। ठीक है, मैं ये ले जाता हूँ, यहाँ देखना क्या है। अभी यही लगता है तो फिर कट में लिख लेगा।
Good morning to my all present here. I am Nehal Bansal and I am Shivana Bhimani. We are your hosts for this 3-day workshop and we'll be here to assist you. I request you all to please settle down. Testing leads to failure and failure leads to understanding. With this quote, I would like to welcome you all back to today's session of this 3-day national workshop on tools in data analytics and R software. I request our Honorable Principal Ma'am to greet our guest, Dr. Ishan Anand, as a planter as a token of warm reception. Now I would request Nancy Kaushik, third-year economics student, to present her beautifully handicrafted gift to our esteemed guests. Give a huge round of applause. Nancy. Now I request Iti ma'am to give a brief introduction.
Greetings of the day to everyone. I am profoundly delighted to take an opportunity to introduce our esteemed guest, Dr. Ishan Anand. He's working as assistant professor in the Department of Humanities and Social Science, IIT Delhi. He has completed Masters from University of Hyderabad, MPhil and PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University. His research interests include agrarian studies, inequalities, exclusion, labor, and political economy. Many of his articles have been published in the Economic and Political Weekly and other reputed journals. Now we request the honorable guest to address the gathering and cast the light of his knowledge upon us. We would be delighted with your expertise and knowledge in every way possible. So without consuming any time, I would like to call upon Dr. Anand to enlighten us with his word of true wisdom.
Okay, thank you for having me. Thanks to Principal Ma'am, Dr. Rosa, and all the colleagues over there. I don't know if my words are true wisdom, but I'll try to talk a little bit about data in particular and data in R. So let me. Is it okay if I move around a little bit? Yeah. So first of all, let me. I was one of you in the sense I graduated from Ramjas College, 2006 to 9. But we had no clue what data analysis is, what R is, what research is. So in that sense, you are extremely privileged. That with time, at such an early level, you are getting to know things that that took a very long time for us. So when we were in our MPhil, doing research, that is when we were introduced to any kind of data analysis software. The whole world was not known to us. So it's a great sort of privilege and opportunity, and you should really thank your teachers for organizing such events. And it's good for us to sort of interact with you and figure out what's going on. So I'm not going to talk a lot about R today, just a little bit. I'll talk more about data sources and what you can do with R. All right. Now the thing about R is that there are several softwares. Right? There are so many of them. You have data, SPSS, you have something called Python, right? And you have something called Excel, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. A lot of it can, you can do the same kind of analysis using any of these, right? And MS Excel, I'm sure all of you are aware. You work on Excel from a very early age. Other softwares, maybe not at this stage. Now, why do we go to R? So, if there are so many softwares available, which one do you choose, right? So, and how do you choose? So how do you sort of, how do you get initiated to R? So, you are getting initiated to R because you are having this workshop here. So, now you know about that. What we did was, can I request, if there's about 1 hour, can you just stop me? Okay, so, my thing was, my seniors used to do SPSS. So that is how I got into SPSS. Then, some other seniors used to do Stata. That is how I got into Stata. And, so it is not really a choice, but you are making an informed choice, right? You know what R is. You can choose to do R or not to do R. So that is another good thing. Now, like I said, there are a lot of softwares. Why do R? And I believe you'll learn a little bit more about it tomorrow as well. Rahul will talk about why R and why statistics in R. But first of all, it is free. That is, I'm not sure you realize the importance, but it's hugely advantageous. So, the software being free and freely available to you any time of the day. So, for instance, some of us who use data, several people use pirated copies because, of course, they can't afford, a genuine copy. And what is the problem? Suppose, there is an update, and suddenly a day before the conference or your research presentation, you cannot open the software because it's expired, the license is expired. You can't buy it. So you are, opening all sort of websites to get some pirated copy. Right? There are also other problems. Suppose you have some query, right? You write to Stata saying, I'm having some problems in figuring out this command. Can you please help me? And the Stata person writes back to you and asks, okay, so what is your license number? And of course, you have no idea because it's a pirated copy and you cannot say this to them. So you just stuck with the problem. So R being free is a huge advantage, and it's a leveler, right? So whether you are in a very high per capita income country or whether you are in a developing country, all of us can work on one single software and be a part of that community. Right? So what I will encourage you to do today is to become a part of the R community. There are so many of them, but one very big community is R ladies. So if any of you are on social media, it's a huge community. R ladies and basically people from different parts of the world. They just form this community of discussing R, discovering, solving each other's problems and so on. Second is it's open source. Now, open source, may not matter at superficial level on the surface, but basically what it means is, suppose you are giving any command, you want to find out the mean of 10 variables, right? Now in Excel, you just drag your cursor, is equal to sum, and you drag your cursor, you get the mean. But what is happening? When you are doing that, what is it that is happening? So you don't know, in the sense that how is Excel, computing that? Or you can think of software such as Stata, where you give a command called sum, and then the name of the variable, you get the mean. But how exactly is Stata computing that? So by open source, you basically mean that if you are capable of reading, you will be able to get the source code. So when you give this command, what is it exactly that the software is doing? It's just slightly technically sound, or if you want to figure it out, you can do that. Right? So it's not as if I was in a conference once and a student presented a paper, and some audience member asked, but how have you done this? And the answer was, I don't know. I gave the command, and these are results, but I don't know what the software does. And it's not that person's fault. You really don't know. But in R, you can, because the source code is available to everybody. That is what it means when we say it's open source, right? Third is reproducible research. Now, what is reproducible research? Suppose, as a part of your Indian economic project, Indian economic course, suppose you are asked to figure out India's GDP growth rate in agriculture, right? And now you are, working, you are going on some website, getting the data, and just before the submission, another quarter is over, and another quarterly sort of data is available, right? Then what do you do? So, one way to go about it is to again go to the website, again download the data, put it in Excel, do all the calculations again, right? And then you will get, whatever growth rate you are trying to compute. It works, you can get the result. The only problem is that you have to do each step again. And if somebody else has to do it, they don't know what you have done, right? If somebody else wants to do the exact same thing, they have no clue what is it that you have done. But if you have some codes written down, suppose 4 or 5 lines of code, anybody in the world, whether they know English or not, they will just see those codes and they will know exactly what you're doing. Right? And 10 years down the line, or 1 quarter down the line when the new data is available, you will be able to add and do the same exercise. So that is what is meant by reproducible research. Anybody with access to R, which is a free software, so all you need is an internet connection to download it. With access to data, will be able to reproduce your research, and that's the scientific way to go about it. Right? What is the good thing about science? It is replicable. So if you are being able to do some exercise, that same thing is replicable across time, across space, across continents. Right? So that is another good thing about art, that it gives you an opportunity for reproducible research. The last, there are several good things about art, but one of the last things that I have mentioned is the complete package. So, how do you write your term papers? So suppose you are working on again Indian economy, GDP growth rate, and you have to write a term paper on discuss the impact of COVID pandemic on India's GDP. Right? Now, what do? You go to some website, find the data, do some analysis, typically in Excel, right? And then you go to MS Word, make some tables. So you transfer your tables from Excel to Word, right? You spend a lot of time in arranging the tables because it's slightly complicated in MS Word. You want to print it, but some part of the table is going into the next page. Then you are trying to reduce the fonts. I'm sure you are familiar with this kind of struggle. Now all that is gone in R, right? Because you can do the data analysis and you can write in the same script and you will get a PDF of it. So you don't need sort of this division where you do whether you are doing data analysis in some other software and you are using some other software to write. So this division is gone with R. You can do all of it in one place, and with a click of a mouse, you will be able to get that report either in Word format or in a PDF format or in an HTML format or whatever format you want. Right? So these are some good things about R, and it is used widely. It is free. It has a great community. So all of these are very good reasons. And R is, I believe, it is the future. You can, it is. So starting at an early age is a great opportunity to have. Okay, so with this, let me just sort of dive into my original topic for today, which is what can you do with that? So what kind of being students of economics, what can we do with that? Right? We are not into computer science, so we are not really interested in developing the software. Right? I mean, that is not our primary. I mean, some of you can do it; it will be great, but we are not essentially looking to develop packages. Develop the software itself. Our primary goal is to learn it so that we can do good economic analysis. Right? That is our aim and ambition. So if that is to be done, we will need to know where to get the data which is relevant for us. Okay? Now, look, there is all kinds of data, all around us. Right? Some people, for instance, do primary surveys. How do you do it? You go to people, you ask them. Then there are official surveys. Right? So you and I can do a survey. So for instance, after I leave, some of you can do a survey on did you like this lecture? That is a primary survey. On the other hand, there are official surveys, the government of India, the government of the United States. If they will do a survey, then there are all kinds of sectoral sort of data where ministries can do surveys. You also have data lying around, just lying around. For instance, if you go to Google, you can get all sorts of data. How many people clicked on a particular news item. That in itself is data. Then there is all kind of data. Then there is something called big data, high frequency data. So again, very briefly, basic thing you need to know is that there are all kinds of data. It is readily available. Most of it is. You just need to sort of figure out and find out which one is useful for you. Now, I will focus on just some kind of data, right? Not all of it, because nobody can focus on all of it, right? What I will focus on is on three things. One, data availability for economic analysis, and this is the kind of data that most economists still use. Right? Not all, because there is no end to it, but many of us will be using these. Where do you get it? What are some common problems? And I'll just present some case studies as a motivation. Right? What can be done. Okay, let us begin. So, one of the sort of important data sources in our country is the census. You have all heard of the census. Anybody knows, how, when it did start? When did the census start? Any guesses? Take a guess. 1950. Actually, it's it started with the British period. So, 1870. I think 1870 or 1850. I mean, yeah. So 1800s, late 1800s. So that is when we had the first census, right? You can check the date, the exact decade. Probably 1870 or 1880, 1890. But since then, almost every decade we have had one. And since you have done stats, or even without it, you know that census covers everybody, right? It just goes to each and every household, collects data on. There are a certain number of questions, 36 questions or so, and for all the 36, it goes to each and every household, asks for information on each and every individual, right? So, what is your name? What is your age? What do you do? Right, and so on and so forth. There are 36 questions. That is the census conducted by the Registrar General of India, again, an official data source. Most countries in the world would have. Right? The good thing about census is it gives you information on everybody, every single individual, every village in the country. Definitely most of them. It is if in a particular census, if there was a problem with a particular village, that's an exception. The problem is, using the data is an issue. You will need to have a very good grasp. So if you are analyzing, 1.4 billion people, you will need to have that kind of machine first of all to be able to handle that kind of data. But typically, people use a block or village or state information. So, for instance, you are all nobody can forget that, but whoever has lived through the first phase of lockdown. Right? We have all lived through that. So, a lot of people started walking back home. Right? We all remember that. Now, how many people? We don't really have data for that. And the problem was that census was a source that could that could give the exact number of people. But the last census happened in 2011, right? And the next census was supposed to happen in 21, but COVID happened, and so there were estimates, all kinds of estimates, but exactly how many people were there. So, for instance, exactly how many people are from Jharkhand, from where I am in Delhi. How do you know, right? So all these things, you'll get it from the census. Now, doing a census is costly. It's time consuming. It's cumbersome. Data takes time. So data from 2011 census. Data on migration came out only in 2020. Some part of it came out earlier, but some part of it took 10 years, for 9 years just to come out. So it is time consuming. Now what do? So one solution is sample surveys, right? And students of any statistics course would know that sampling is a thing in statistics. So, for instance, how is it relevant? Suppose somebody comes to your college and does a survey and asks, how many people know R, right? Or how many people know about data? And they come to this classroom. Some surveyor is knocking on the door, and they happen to come to this classroom, and all of you will raise their hands. After today, we are all experts on R. We know R, and they will publish a report saying, there's a great college in DU where everybody, 100% of the people know R. But will that be the correct analysis? Because your sample is biased. On the other hand, on the other hand, if the sample is chosen wisely, accurately, scientifically, then you can actually say some good things, meaningful things, right? So that is what a sample survey is. That instead of conducting a census, what you do is you collect data of you collect a sample, right? And you collect it in a way that it gives a meaningful estimate, right? So that sample should be in technical terms representative, right, of the population. So that is sample surveys again. I'm talking just about the Indian case here, right? So the Indian case, there is a body called the NSSO, National Sample Survey Office. It is a part of CSO. It's basically part of the Ministry of Statistics, right? And then there are some private surveys. So these are official surveys, but you also have private surveys. So two famous private surveys are, one is IHDS, Indian Human Development Survey, conducted by University of Maryland and others, and the other famous private survey is CMIE, Center for Monitoring Indian Economy. So it's not it's a firm, but it conducts all sorts of surveys, right? So and then you also get, so these are sample surveys, but what about what if you want to know some industry specific data? What is the production of rice in the country? For that, you don't need to go to each and every farmer and ask them, right? You can collect it in a different way. What is the car production? So on. So there you can get data in a different, or how many bank branches are there in the country in rural areas, right? So you don't need to do a sample survey. That can be found from official data, right? So you have yet another data source where there are a lot of official websites, reports, which give you all this data, right? So any ministry will have data on concerning their area. So if you want to figure out something on agriculture, go to the Ministry of Agriculture. Typically there will be a section called document or report or data. You will get some information. And there are other repositories, private repositories such as the EPWRF. EPW, all of you know. EPWRF is EPW Research Foundation. They have created their own repository. Right? RPI is yet another repository. So you want to figure out, any data related to Indian economy. Typically, you can go to the RPI website. So, for instance, what is the wage level? What is the all India average, or what is the wage rate for agricultural labor in Tamil Nadu? Right? So so there are all kinds of data, and you can find it in all kinds of places. You can categorize it according to private, public. You can categorize it according to sample surveys, vis-a-vis census. You can categorize it sector-wise, sectoral data. Now, where do you find them? So, what I will do is I will give this PPT. There may be some links. So, this NSSASI, this is a clickable link. You can click on it and go on their website, but it is also not hard to Google. So, you go to the MOSPI website, MOSPI, Ministry of Statistics, and you will find something called National Data Archives. So, as the name suggests, it is an archive, right? It contains it's a library for all the data sources. Now, when I was doing my research, we had to actually go and buy it. It was not readily available. Or you will write a letter to your chairperson, please buy this data. It takes time. Now they have done a great thing. All of this is available free of cost on their website. So all the sample surveys, the first sample survey for which the data is the raw data is available is conducted in 1983. Right? Sample surveys were conducted before, but the data in raw form is available since 83. So since 83 to the present, so if you want to you want the data for 2020, you go to the website, you create an account, and you download. So all you need to do is remember the password, right? Which is sometimes difficult. You forget the password and you have to create a new account. But you will be able to download data ready to use through the Mosby website. Then there is something very similar to this. There is something called ICSSR, Indian Council for Social Science Research. They also have a website. So if you Google it, you'll be able to find it. So ICSSR is also a report. So it's exactly the same. You want some sample survey data. Suppose you're looking at education, right? And you want to figure out how many people, what is the gross enrollment ratio. How many people go to college in Bihar vis-a-vis Maharashtra. Now, where do you find the data? So this is one place, ICSSR data service. It's very similar to Moscow. Then, CMIE, as I said, is a private data source. You have to buy it. It's quite expensive. Typically, institutions buy it, but it's fairly expensive. Nonetheless, it is one of the data sources which gives you high frequency data. Suppose after this, you get placed in a research firm and they ask you, okay, you are all economists. Can you tell us, we are trying to figure out, we are trying to come up with a product. Can you tell us, where will we get some data on sale? So then, CMI is one source. If you tell them CMI will give you high frequency data, they'll be quite interested. And again, as I said, all ministries. So, for instance, if you want to find out education-related data, you go to the Ministry of Education. They will have their own data set, right? So, these are, and let me reiterate, I am not giving an exhaustive list. These are just some sort of, some places where you can find data. Now, another point to note is this. On one theme, there are several possible data sources. Suppose you want to figure out, the employment situation in India, right? It's a fairly or unemployment situation in India, or what are the wages. You can go to several data sources, several of them. So NSSO is one data source. Census is another data source, which will tell you how many people do what kind of jobs, right? You can go to private data sets, CMI, IHVS. If you want to know how many people are working in industries, there is something called annual survey of industry, right? A government industry. There is something called labor bureau. Again, a public sort of platform in the government of India, giving you data on labor, wages, right, so on and so forth. So that becomes the challenge then. So if there are when you are doing research, you will have two kinds of challenges. One is you will not know where to get data from. Suppose you are working on labor, or you're working on one topic, topic X, and you just don't know where to get the data from, which is a bad problem to have. But the other kind of problem is you will have 10 different sources to choose from, right? So as you can see, you have so many different sources to choose from, and then you'll have to figure out which is best suited to our business. So it's not as if one data source is bad and the other is good. It depends upon what you are looking at, or what you're looking for. So depending upon that, you choose a particular data source, right? Likewise, if you're working on let's say, as I said, migration. Census is one way to go about it, but there is also sample survey, which will give you now. All of these don't give the exact same information. They may have, so they may capture different aspects of information on employment, right? So if you are looking at employment, there are so many aspects, right? Who are working, what kind of jobs, at what wages, what time, are you in the formal sector or informal sector, are you liking your job or not? So it's not as if all this data will be in all the data sets. So that is where the role of researcher comes, right? And how do you do that? So to do that, you need to have some training and background in economics, or in whichever area you are working on, right? So we are not really into data science, right? So we are into finding meaningful analysis, economic analysis from the data that is available. Right? So how you go about it, which data set you choose, which variable you choose, will depend upon the nature of your question, the nature of your analysis, and how you do it is with the help of the training you are receiving as an economic student. Right? The theories you are learning in class. Okay. Anybody has any question? Please feel free to stop me and ask. Now, as far as data analysis is concerned, you can do all sort of data analysis using all sort of techniques and softwares. Doesn't necessarily mean it will be good, right? It is like English. Suppose you are speaking in very, very good English. There is no guarantee that your argument is strong. You can be saying absolute nonsense in impeccable English with accurate sort of grammar, and it doesn't mean anything. Likewise, if you are using very sophisticated techniques, your coding is very efficient, but if your data set is not good, your analysis is completely meaningless. Right? So in statistics, there is something called garbage in, garbage out. So if you are feeding garbage in your software and doing very good coding, what you are getting out of it is still garbage. So the data quality, which data set, where you're getting it from, what you are measuring is very, very important, and that is subjective. So as researchers, it's your job to figure it out. You cannot say, suppose you're given a term paper and you present the result, and your teacher says, what is this? This doesn't even mean anything. You cannot turn around and say, but ma'am, what can I do? This is what the data set showed me. That is not what you are trained for. That is not what you should be doing. So that is where your subjective, your skill as a researcher comes in. That you should be able to choose a good data set, a decent data set, and produce a meaningful analysis. Okay, so finding the appropriate data set, that is one thing, right? The second is when you find a data set, not all of it is available in ready-to-use format, right? So think of it as cooking items. So some things are just ready to eat. You go to the market, you buy it, you open the packet, and it's ready to eat. May not taste as good as your home prepared things. So you buy a lot of ingredients, or you gather a lot of ingredients. You take time, you prepare them. It involves years of training and skill to be able to prepare a decent meal, right? So it is something like that, with data analysis, that just to be able to do a meaningful analysis for a lot of data set, it takes time to sort of understand the data, to prepare it, and only then can you sort of start using it, right? So this is also part of sort of your training as a researcher, to be able to find data, good data, not garbage, and to be able to sort of bring all the ingredients together, all the kind of data that you need together to prepare it, and only then can you start analyzing. So if it is going above your head, what do we mean by preparing? I'll come to it just in a bit. Then you have to. There is this challenge of making finding comparable data. So I'll give you one example. Suppose you are interested in looking at poverty, right? And you pick up a survey from 1983, and the poverty rate is 30%. You pick up a survey from 2020, the poverty rate is 10%, and you say poverty has declined. But are these two data sets actually comparable? There is no guarantee that it will be. Right? The people who are producing these surveys, it is not their job to make your life as a researcher easy, right, or comfortable. So these data sets may well be not comparable at all because of changed definitions. So suppose earlier you were thinking of somebody as a poor person who doesn't own a house, and in 2020 you are thinking of a person as a poor person who doesn't, let's say, own a vehicle. Random example, but you get the point. Now, if you just compare these two, it doesn't make any sense. So you cannot, you cannot say that there is a trend in poverty because these two data sets are not comparable. So that is another challenge as a researcher to find sort of comparable, compatible data sets using which you can say some things that are meaningful and scientific and correct, right? Okay, other thing, and I'll give examples for all of this. The other thing is sort of presentation and misrepresentation. So how do you present your data? Now, if you're, there are several ways. So you can present your data in form of a huge table that nobody in the audience can read. That happens all the time. So if you go to conferences, you will see somebody has done some regression, and there are so many numbers. There are some stars that you can see which denote significance, but you have no idea what that you can't read, you can't question. Likewise, suppose you are making a huge table, right? So that is sort of not useful for anybody. That is what R or any software, but primarily R allows you to do. It allows you to present your data in a format that is easy to access and easy to analyze and easy to understand for anybody, right? That can take any form. That can take the form of visualization. So you can plot your data and create a beautiful graph, right? It can be a bar graph, it can be all kinds of graphs. It can be a short table, right? It can be a summary statistics. So how to present your data is another sort of part of research, and which you can do. So R is known for its capacity to create great graphs. So if you're looking at visualization, you can do it in Excel as well, or Stata, or Python. But R is particularly famous, and you can make just great. It makes for great visualization. Second thing is misrepresentation. People often misrepresent it. So you also have to be cautious of that, and I'll give you another example in just a minute. Okay, now so let me go deeper into sample surveys in India. Right? Suppose you have now learned R, you know the basic commands. Then the next question is, what do you do with it? Right? One thing to do is to analyze some random data, but that will not help you in an economics course. Right? You want to do a good term paper, or something like that, and you want to come up with an impressive story. What happened to India's GDP growth post pandemic? Is there a gender gap in terms of, let's say, wages? What is this Delhi pollution? Is it taking a toll on children's health? You want to come up with some meaningful analysis, right? Suppose you have figured out a data set, and in India, the NSSO, the thing that I mentioned, it conducts lots of samples on different aspects. If you want data on education, NSSO, incomes, education, consumption, inequality, poverty, health, right? So a lot of surveys are done by this one single entity called NSSO. So it is good to sort of learn this, right? Now, what NSSO does is to, it's official body, so these data sources are official, so nobody can challenge it. I mean, nobody can say that, so for instance, if you conduct data, people will ask questions, is the sampling correct? Is the procedure right? Have you actually conducted the surveys, or you are just sitting in a room and filling for everybody? But NSSO data has some sanctity. I'm not saying it is beyond criticism. Of course, people do and should criticize, but it has some sanctity. It is official data. It's an official data source. It's acceptable all over the world, right? It is used for poverty estimation, which is then used by institutions such as World Bank, Government of India. So you suppose you have figured out that, okay, I need to work on education, and I can get my information from NSS. Right? So this part is done. Then how do you go about it? Then you go to the MOSPI website, right? And you go to the MOSPI website, and then you find that data is in the form of a raw ingredient. So the cooking analogy, you are finding data in form of a raw ingredient. So it is just something called a CSV file, right? So it is a text file in which there are random numbers written all over the place, and you don't know what to do with it. So it's not as if it is presented in an Excel format where you have rows, where you have columns, and you can see it and you can make sense of it. That how many people go to school at what age, region wise. So it's not in that format. So then what do you do? So that kind of data is called raw data, right? It's raw data. It's a raw ingredient. So using R, what you can do is you can extract that data and bring it to a format which is then ready to use. Right? So this is called preparing the data set. Or so in the case of NSSO, you need to extract data. So it is in a form which is raw. You use the software. You use some, basically you write some codes. So you write a chunk of codes. You press and enter, and then because of the way you have written codes, the software will extract the data and present to you in a format which you can see, which you can use, analyze in a ready-to-use format. Now there was an earlier, so before some we were researchers, it used to come in a raw format and you had to do this extraction. Now the good thing that they have done is that they have started to give data in a new format, which will do the extraction for you. So you don't need to do any kind of coding. You go to the website. So the first method is the traditional method. You write a bunch of code, right? That code is used to sort of bring it to a usable format. But there is also a new format, right? And the new format is again free of cost. It is available on their website. It is called. Okay, so the image is not come. So there was supposed to be an image here. I don't know what happened to it, but never mind. So on the Mosby website, there is this new software called Nestor. Nestor, right? So basically, what it does is, you go to National Data Archives. There is something called get micro data, and once you do it, you will be asked to download a software called Nestor. And once you do that, that software will take care of it. So you do, in 2-3 clicks, the entire NSSO data will be available to you in ready-to-use formats. Right? This saves a lot of time, and you don't have to go through the traditional method of. So so you may not readily be able to follow all this. You'll have to do this actually physically to be able to understand it. But just know that there is an easier method available, and you can go back and try it. It just takes a few clicks, and you will that's the power of sort of data and software, that you will get in 2-3 clicks a data set which is ready to use. You can it's a great part to have. So anybody asks you what is the unemployment rate in India, within 5 minutes now you can find that information, right? So that is one way to go about it. Yes, sir. Now let me come to some case studies. I think I'm going faster than I thought, but let me just come to some case studies, and probably this will motivate you, and this will let you know of what are the possibilities. What kind of analysis can we do. Now, so poverty, I think all of us will agree that poverty is an important sort of debate, or an important area of concern for any economist. Particularly so in a country where, so do you know which is the country with the highest absolute number of poor in the world? Any guesses? Bangladesh? Any other guesses? Think of Bangladesh's neighbor. Yeah, it's India. So so it swings from India to Nigeria. And India, of course, has this disadvantage of having a huge population. So we're talking about the absolute number of poor, right? And again, it depends on poverty line. But Nigeria was one of the nations, and India probably today, after the pandemic, is one of the nations with highest absolute number. We are not talking about poverty rates here, right? Absolute number of poor. Now, there is this huge debate going on in academic circles on what is the poverty rate in India. Right? So a question as simple as, who is a poor person today, right? Or how many people are poor in India? It seems like a very simple question. It should not be very complicated to give a number. Right? With all the government machinery, all the data, sophisticated softwares and methods, but we still don't know. If you ask an economist, the typical answer would be we don't know, because there are several estimates. Several estimates. So let me just give you, a taste of this debate. Now we had this debate once in the early 2000s. So early 2000s, the economists world over were debating. So we liberalized in 91, right? And the underlying sort of understanding was that with liberalization, there will be the economic growth will get a boost, and what is known as the rising tide will lift all the boats. So with economic growth, poverty will decline very, very sharply. That was one strand of belief, right? So some people really believed in this philosophy. Others said that no, liberalization may also have a negative impact. We don't know. So when the data came, poverty. So sample survey was conducted in 1999, and the data came out. There was a huge debate on what happened to poverty. So that was that debate was labeled the Great Indian Poverty Debate. Right? It took place in early 2000s, and the argument was what happened to India's poverty after liberalization. That, and some people said it has increased, some said it has fallen. There were some data issues. I'll not go into it, but after that there was a relative sort of consensus. So there was relative consensus that poverty has gone down between 2004-5 and 2010. Okay. Now, India's economy, there was a massive slowdown. All of us are aware. Anytime you open any news channel, read a newspaper, anywhere, you will see that GDP growth rate is an issue, right? Even before the pandemic. So there was a growth rate slowdown. So then the obvious question is what happened to poverty? Now look at these estimates. So using sample surveys, researchers published an estimate saying the poverty rate in 2018 is 50%. Right? I've not given the names, but it is not very hard to find. You will do just PLFS poverty, you'll be able to find those research papers. Since that is not the main objective here, I'm just trying to tell you what can be done using the software and data sets on Indian economy. So they said poverty rate is 50% in 2018. All this is pre-pandemic. Then when I say PLFS is basically a sample survey. The full name is Periodic Labor Force Survey. So every year the government sends people to do a sample survey, and it asks questions related to employment. Right? But it also asks, as a side, one question is on how much do you consume? Right? How many rupees did you spend in the last week or in the last month? Right? So suppose you said, okay, I spent 2,000 rupees. So that is your monthly per capita consumer expense. Using that, and poverty rate is typically calculated. The variable that is used to calculate poverty is monthly per capita consumer expense. So we don't calculate poverty by income. Right? So the official sample surveys won't come and ask you what your income is, and then say, okay, anybody earning below 2,000 rupees is poor. No, that is not how it goes. The way we calculate poverty in India and in many parts of the world is to ask how much did you spend, right? Not how much did you earn. Why? Because there are several reasons. Again, let's not go into it, but this periodic labor force survey is meant to capture something else, but one variable is also consumption. Okay. The survey that is designed to actually capture consumption in great detail is called Consumer Expenditure Survey, CES. Now the CES was conducted in 2017-18, but that report never came out. The official said there is some problem with the data, so we are not releasing it. Later on, some journalist leaked, it was leaked in the media, and according to that leaked report, the poverty rate was close to 35%. Right? So this is the survey that is officially used to measure poverty. So according to that, poverty was 35%, and the World Bank has come up with a new report very, very recently. Again, Google World Bank poverty, you will find some research papers, and they say poverty in India is just about 1%. Right? So you can see the range from 50% to 1%. Now, which one is correct? and these are all, reputed economists. It's not as if, this research is being done by, they're all reputed and economists doing research. Data set is good, right? But we are getting very, very different results. Now, so that is, if there is one thing that you should take away from, all this today's talk of mine, is that it is not the software. It is also not the data. It is what you do with the software using the data that counts for good research. Okay, so you can master R but still produce a horrible research. You can master a particular data set but still come up with an analysis that is wrong. So which one of it is correct? I'll not go into, I of course have a view, but that is beside the point. The simple point is that on a topic or on a question which is as simple as this, what is the poverty rate in India? You have a range from 50%, so basically saying half the population in India is poor, right? According to government-based poverty lines. So I think okay. There is a slight digression, but I think it's worth it. So anybody knows how do we, how do we calculate poverty? Yes, but sure. So okay, so suppose you have a calorie intake level, 2200 calories. Then what do you do? What is the next step? Sorry? Head count it. Yeah, that's what I was. So basically, you figure out some poverty line. How you figure a poverty line is a different thing. Calorie norm, so what level of consumption will give you a like a certain lifestyle, right? There's a lot of debate around that also. But suppose you have figured out that okay, if you consume, if you spend 50 rupees in a day. Using that 50 rupees, you will be able to buy a certain basket of commodities, some food, some clothing, some shelter, some education, which will make you non-poor, right? So that 50 becomes the poverty line. And then what you do is you figure out the head count ratio. Anybody spending less than 50 is poor. Anybody spending more than 50 or more is non-poor. Now, all the problem here is these three are completely different data sets, right? So, this is measuring something completely. So, and okay, so 50 rupees. So, what are the related issues? The related issue can be as a surveyor, I go to your house and I ask you, okay, how much have you spent today? Right? You'll probably be able to give a more accurate answer because you'll calculate. Yeah, today I went. I had, I don't know, chole kulche on the side. I traveled in the bus. Bus I believe is free. But whatever the expenses you have made. Suppose they ask you how much you have spent in the last 30 months. Right? It will be a different conversation. Then you will sit and so basically recall periods may be different, right? Again, there can be very different kinds of data set which will give you different results as far as poverty estimation is concerned. So this is something. Okay. Okay. So the graphs are not coming. Just hold on. Yeah, sorry about that. So this is what I was talking about. So this is the Nestar software that I was referring to. Yeah. So the thing that was not coming before, Nestar again readily Googleable. Okay. So basically comparability is the issue. Can you compare these two or not? That is an issue. So when you are doing any kind of analysis, it's something you need to keep in mind. The second thing that I want to sort of talk very briefly about is some common issues. when you are using any sample survey, right? It's not in a format. Again, it's not in a format that you can use very readily. So suppose the information that you need is in 3 different files, right? The information that you need is in 3 different files, but you need to bring them together. Okay, so suppose a surveyor went to your house and asked you information on what you have consumed in the last month. They ask you how much property you have, and they ask you whether you go to school or what do you do. So these are 3 different kinds of information, right? And they are in 3 different files. Now the kind of analysis that I am interested in, suppose I want to find out the people who go to school, how much they spend vis-a-vis the people who don't go to school, how much they spend. But this information are 3 different files. So how do we go about it? So then you need to bring these 3 files together, right? Again, without going into the technical or the coding aspect of it, these are some things that you will need to be aware of. That all the information that you might need might not be in one place. It might be scattered across files. And using your software, using your codes, you will have to make sure that all of them are brought together. Right? So that is done by a step or a technique called merging. Right? So you have different data sets, and as the name suggests, you are just merging. Right? Sometimes you do a different kind of exercise where you append and basically you bring different data sets together. These are slightly advanced things in the sense that when you will start doing it, you will face these problems, and then you will have to find sort of suitable answers. Do we merge the data set? Do we append it? But as of now, you should just know that all data sets, there are different kinds of data sets, and you need to do some sort of exercise to prepare them, to do your analysis. Okay. Moving on. Now, suppose again, so the example that I was giving you of doing a survey, somebody comes and asks, you how many of you know R, and all of you say yes. That may not be a representative sample. Likewise, suppose somebody goes to do a survey and ask, so the sample surveys that I'm talking about typically have a sample size of 4 to 5 lakh individuals and 1 to 2 lakh households, right? So what is India's population size? Anybody knows? What is the population? 1.140 crore, right? Now you are asking 1 lakh people what they eat and how much are they spent. But how do you even make sure that the voice or the data of that 1 lakh people is representative of the entire country, right? So first step is sampling, and then you apply something known as weights, right? So with the use of weights, you have to use appropriate weights, you have to use correct weights to make sure that you are scaling up your results, right? Otherwise, your data will not be representative, right? So again, this is something that you will, when you get to do, when you get into NSSO, you will realize that weight is a very, very sort of important component of doing any analysis. Okay, because your data set has to be representative of something. You are doing a survey in Punjab. Suppose you go and do a survey in Punjab of 10 people. Can you say with confidence that my survey of 10 people represents, the estimate of the entire state of Punjab? Probably not. But if you have done, what is known as a stratified random sampling, if you have used appropriate weights, then the results that you get may be representative of the entire state of Punjab. Right? So weight is an important component. Okay. Now, let me just jump to 2 case studies. One is, our co-authored research. It's a media article, so it's not a research paper, but this might sort of give you an idea of the things that can be done with the data sources that we have just discussed. So, the lockdown period. Lockdown period is, you were all probably having some sort of online classes or the other, but you were aware, we are all aware that that was quite a phase in the sense that everybody was confined to their rooms, right? Everybody. The first lockdown, most of us, except for essential workers who had to go out, most of us were confined to our homes. Now, it is not surprising that the GDP will take a hit, right, of that quarter. So you know that GDP can be computed or is computed quarterly as well as annually, right? So the GDP for that quarter, April, May, June, will take a hit because 25th March onwards we start the lockdown, right? And the whole of April, whole of May, I think till towards end of May, we were in complete lockdown, right? So the GDP will take a hit. It's not a surprise. So what was the hit? So the GDP shrank by 24%, right? So April to June 2020, the GDP for April to June 2020, real GDP, adjusted for inflation, was 24% less than the GDP in April to May 2019. Right? Now, anybody can tell me why are we looking at April to June 2020 vis-a-vis April to June 2019 and not for what comparison? COVID-19? No, I'm saying, so why are we comparing May of this month to May of last month and not May to, let's say, April? You understand? So we are comparing April, May, June 2020 to April, May, June 2019 and not March, April, May 2020. Why do we do that? So seasonal, because the GDP in India, GDP is the final sum or final value of all goods and services produced, right? Now, the kind of goods and services produced in April, May, June can be very different from the kinds of goods and services produced in January, February, March, right, or any quarter. So, because of the seasonal nature of our production, right? So compared to April, May, June 2019, the GDP shrunk. So it's not, fall in GDP growth. The size of the GDP itself is shrinking, so it's negative growth, right? GDP shrunk by 24%. It was bad news, people said, okay, world over GDP is shrinking, so the value of goods and services is shrinking. Now, the official sample survey published its report. So, people were still, the government officials were still going and doing sample surveys. Right? They were collecting information on employment. Maybe not during the lockdown, but they went later and asked, okay, what did you do during this period? What was your wage? Now, when data came for this period, the results were the following. The official results, and all this is still available on the website. The official results were that salaried workers saw a rise in their income, a rise of 2% in their income. Right? So April, May, June, GDP fell by 24%, but that's a different data source. The sample survey said, but the income of salaried workers went up by 2%. And they also said the income of self-employed. So there are all kinds of workers, right? So there are one kind of workers who are salaried, who are assured of a monthly salary. The other kind of workers are self-employed. So they don't answer to anybody, they work for themselves. They can be small businesses, big businesses, street vendors, they can be private practitioners. So the data said that their sort of income fell by 8%. Now this is strange. Do you find anything strange? If you put all these three data sets together, do you think there is anything strange? Or do you think it's a absolutely acceptable result? Or is it, is there something which you see that is not right or that doesn't add up? 2% rise? Why? Why is that wrong? What is the problem? Yeah, so intuitively, if your GDP is the value of all goods and services, now, or it is also income, right? You can GDP, you can measure GDP, income approach, different approaches. So if you are saying the aggregate income fell by 24%, and then you are saying the income of the salaried section actually rose. We are also saying the income of self-employed fell, but only by 8%. So then, whose income is falling so much that the aggregate income is falling by 24%, right? So there is something not right with this result. Now, you will have to have a sort of you have to look at data carefully to figure out that there is a problem. If you just look at the numbers and take it at face value. So suppose you say, okay, again you submit a term paper and you say, but sir, this is the official data set. So that doesn't mean anything. It is official doesn't mean it's correct or it is incorrect. You have to sort of interrogate. Yeah. But this has the information on the organization. So that is why it was surprising that how is it that that's a good sort of way to you are looking for, then you are looking for answers. So first you have found the problem, or intuitively you think that okay, it may not be correct, and then you start looking for problems. So then you ask questions like this: is it because this does not capture the information better? Is it because for some other reason? Right? So that is exactly what we started to do. We started to look for answers because this didn't feel right. Now, when we did that, we found the problem. So what the PLFS report does, again, Government of India official report, what it does is it calculates the mean income. So if you are calculating income growth rate, whether income fell or income increased, how do you do that? First of all, you will have the mean income of April, May, June 2019 and mean income of April, May, June 2020. And then you will compare these two. What are the things you have to keep in mind? They both have to be real, right, or nominal, in the same unit. So suppose it is real because you want inflation adjusted. So you have that now. Now, how do you calculate mean? So how do you calculate mean? Anybody? So sigma over xi by n, right? Now that all of you know it from 10th standard that you add everything and you divide by n. They have done the exact same thing, but here is where it becomes tricky. What do you do when there are some people who have said that their income is zero? They did not earn anything during this period. What do you do then? Do you include them into your mean or do you exclude? Include. So look, there is, I mean that is a subjective point. Right? That is where you are training as a researcher, what you are looking for. There's a subjective element there. That comes. So it turns out the official PLFS report used to exclude the people who said that they have earned, they were working, but their earning was zero from the calculation of the mean. And this they have been doing for the past 3 years. I mean, it's not as if they did it now. The PLFS started happening in 2017, 18, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. Right? So all 3 years, they excluded the people with zero earnings who said that I did go to work, but for some reason or the other, my earning was zero. Maybe my employer said that pay me later, maybe I was sick, and I had a job. So suppose I take a sick leave from my university. So I do have a job. When I am not sick, I will sort of get back my job, but I'm not paid for that period. But that doesn't mean I'm unemployed. No, I'm very much employed. Just that my income is zero. Now, should that be sort of taken into account when we are computing the overall average or not? So that I said is discretionary. That it depends on the researcher, and it depends on what you're looking for, what kind of estimate you want. So it turns out the PLFS used to exclude them. Now, in a normal year, suppose a non-pandemic year, 2017, 18, 19, it is not really a problem because that proportion of people who used to have a job but had zero earnings was very small. It was minuscule, as it will be. You can imagine how many people will be there who will work for free, right? There will be some people for some reason who are not getting paid, but that proportion will typically be very small. So whether you exclude them or you include them, it did not used to make much of a difference in the calculation of mean. Right? So that is the thing about mean, that if you're excluding a section of your sample, it may make a difference. Right? Mean is affected by extreme values. So if you're excluding somebody with very low or very high income, that would make a difference. And then in turn, that will make a difference in computing growth rates. Right? So 17, 18, it was fine. 18, 19, it was fine. 19, 20, what happened? It was a lockdown. Lockdown, some people had work, or many people had work, but they were not paid because they did not turn up because the factories were just not running. So even though many people lost their jobs also, but there were also several people who did not lose their jobs, but at the same time they were sitting at home and not working and hence not getting paid. So they reported their earnings as zero, which was true. The PLFS, what they did was, they used the same old methodology that they were using for the last 2 years and excluded them from average computations, right? And so this is what happened. So your small red graph, which you can barely see because that number is very small. 0.1%, 0. So this is rural, urban, and all India for salaried workers and for self-employed, rural, urban, and all India. So let's take the example of self-employed all India. So the people who work for themselves, suppose they have a small shop, right, outside your college, self-teach. A very small proportion, 0.7% of all self-employed people in India. So less than 1% said that they had zero earnings in the previous quarter, April to June 2019. So if you exclude 0.7%, it did not make any difference to the mean calculation. Look what happened here. Suddenly, about 13%, so more than 1 in 10, right? A huge number. They said that they had a shop outside your college, but since you were not coming to college, nobody was buying tea from them, right? And they had zero earnings, and the PLFS excluded that. So for every sort of for rural, urban, salaried, self-employed, you can see suddenly that there is a huge jump in the proportion of people who are reporting that they had zero income, but they were employed. Now, what we did was we included them in the analysis or in the computation of averages. Why did we include them? Because to us it made absolute sense that you are calculating mean of incomes, and these are the people who are getting no income because of it's not a voluntary choice that they are sitting at home and they don't want any income. They had the jobs, and for us it made sense. So the moment we included these zero incomes, we added this to the numerator, right, and the denominator, the n also expanded. Then the average incomes for April, May, June 2020 fell down very sharply. Right, it fell down very sharply because you are adding a large number of people. You are adding basically a large number of zeros to your numerator. Right, so sigma xi is whatever it was plus 10,000 zeros. Right. So then look what happened. So here we said that again it's rural, urban, rural plus urban, but forget about the details. We were saying salaried workers, their income went up by 2%. When we included the zeros, the income actually came down by 8%. Right? And salaried workers are relatively better off in our country. There's huge lines about jobs, there's huge pressure for people to get a job because this is a short monthly return. So these are better off workers and their income fell by 8%. Look at what happened to the self-employed. So the revised estimate, the self-employed, their income fell. The all India, it fell by 26%. Right? For urban India, so in rural India, many of the self-employed are farmers, but farming still continued during the lockdown. Those who really suffered mainly were urban self-employed. So think about all the small street vendors, all your rickshaw pullers, auto drivers, any small business, small shop owners, restaurants, dhabas. There were just no people on the street, right? So their income, urban India, it fell by around 43%. If we include the people who had zero earnings. So now suddenly it makes sense. That GDP fell by 24%. That squares up with this evidence. That yes, self-employed earning fell by roughly 26%, which is so around 50% of India's workforce is self-employed. Right? So if the self-employed, their earning is falling by 26%, then and the salaried earning is also falling by 8%, then you can have some sense that okay, this squares with the evidence that GDP also fell. Right? Otherwise, we are living in a strange country where average income is falling, but the income of some people is rising. some one section, and the income of some other section is falling, but by very little. Now, this is forget about this. So, how did we do this? It's not, and you can have tens of different kind of analysis like this. What does it require? It requires you to know some software. So how were we able to do this? We were able to use the PLSS data, bring it to a software, and analyze it. Right? So that is what R is for. And I know I've not gone too much into R, but believe me, R is best learned on your own. There are hundreds of resources out there. Just go on YouTube and type R, and the problem in R is not the lack of availability. The problem is there are so much to learn from that you just get lost. That there are all these 20 freely available R courses. Which one do I choose? And my suggestion is choose any. Just choose any and stick to it. So the problem with R is that it has a slightly steep learning curve. So initially you might find it slightly more difficult. So Excel you can just see and okay, I go to home, I go to edit, I go to view. Or maybe slightly more steep in terms, it might take some more time to learn. But once you have a grip, and the best way to do is to sort of dirty or to go to NSSO, or any data source, download that data source, and try to sort of come up with this analysis or any analysis, right? Let me show you another chart. This case study 2. This won't take long. So this is a graph which shows you the absolute numbers of farmers who who died by suicide in India between the period 1995 and 2014. Okay. Now it shows a trend, right? So what is the trend here? Rising and then falling. So what does that mean? So suppose that I'll tell you what a lot of people were complaining that there is huge agrarian distress in the country, and farmer suicide is a reflection of agrarian distress. That people are not able to pay back their debts, their incomes are low, so it just reflects the poor state of agriculture in the country. Right? So farmer suicide was taken as one variable to indicate the level of distress in the country. People are so distressed that they are being driven to suicide. Right? If you look at this graph, some people may interpret it as saying that agrarian distress has eased out. Right? That is, so I presented this paper in some conference, and they said, but what are you talking about? What agrarian distress? Because there is a sharp fall, and in terms of absolute numbers, so there are roughly about 18,000 farmers who committed or who were driven to suicide in 2004-5, right? And that number has come down to around 10,000, and population is increasing, right? But the proportion of farmers. So does it then say does it that then paint a picture of improving conditions in Indian agriculture? So you can reach that conclusion, but here is the sort of hidden. P. Sainath is a famous journalist. Right? He is one of the four. Almost is the expert on the rural economy, agriculture, farmer suicide. So he was the one every year. People will wait for his take, and he came up with these stories, and later on other people also added to it. You can just Google his articles and read it. It's very insightful. So what they found was the following. Every year when farmer suicide data will come, and this is from official data set. So there is something called ADSI. I'm forgetting the name, but if you look at crime and suicide data in India, this is again from official government of India sources. Every year they will publish a report. How many people were driven to suicide? How many people committed a crime? What kind of crime? Which state? Right? What was the cause of suicide? So there was a huge uproar in the mid 2000s. Every year when this data was published, that look, this year even more farmers were driven to suicide. There is something wrong with our agricultural economy. We have to change that policy. Now now what suddenly happened post 2010? This data comes from the FIR that is lodged by the police. Right? So if some suicide happens, police will note it. And that data will be, so every state government will, police is a state subject, every state will do it. That data is sent up for compilation. And this thing will sort of compile for every state. And then you will get a all India number. Now, because of the bad press and because of the fact that this was in limelight, a lot of states suddenly started to report zero suicides. All of a sudden. So, there were states that reported 1,000 farm suicides in a particular year, let's say 2011. And in 2012, they reported zero farm suicides. So that is what is happening here in this section. So the sharp fall that you see is because a lot of states suddenly started officially reporting zero farm suicides. So from 900,000, 700, it came to 0, 1, 2. And obviously there is a fall. So again, this is, we earlier talked about presentation and misrepresentation. This is a classic case of misrepresentation. So you may have, so if you learn R, very soon you will learn something about ggplot2. Right? It's a package that you can use to draw beautiful graphs. But as I said in the beginning, garbage in, garbage out. If you use this data in ggplot, you will get the exact same graph, and you will get, if you don't know the full story, then you will do an analysis which will say that India's agriculture has been doing phenomenally well after 2011. Farmers are all happy. Look at the suicide rates. But as a researcher, if you go deeper into how data is collected, right? Is the methodology the same? Is the data comparable? Is reporting the same? Has something changed? If you ask these questions, likewise in the previous slide, is the methodology the same? Now, in that case, the methodology is exactly the same. Reporting is exactly the same. But what has changed is the context, right? In one period, there were a lot more people who were reporting zero incomes, and as a researcher, it just makes sense for them to be included. So, using all the judgments that you have learned in your classes, as an economics student, when you apply that, then you will be able to say that okay, we need to get more data to say something meaningful about Indian agriculture or the state of farm laborers. Okay, last slide. So, some suggestions, advice on what to do and what not to do. So, first of all, learn the software. And the best way to learn the software is to replicate and extend. So, don't just, you can take a hypothetical data set. So, R comes with a lot of hypothetical data sets. There's something called IRIS data set, MPG. There are all sorts of readily available data sets which courses will typically ask you to do. That you load a particular data set, do some analysis. Yes, do that. But my suggestion is something else. Pick up a paper, simple paper, research paper, not a complicated one. Pick up a media paper. Media. Somebody has written an article in the media saying India's poverty rate has gone up, or India's GDP. Somebody has shown a graph saying India's GDP growth is this. My simple suggestion to you is go to the original data source, be it the RBI, be it the NSSO, any format. Pick up that data set, bring that CSV file into R, plot that and try to replicate and get that same result. That is known as replication. So once you start replicating, you will learn how to import data, you will learn how to analyze, you will learn how to plot, you will learn ggplot. And if you are sort of, how do you then present the data? So, there is something called R Markdown. Okay, so these slides are all made in R Markdown. So, you just sort of give some commands, you run that, and you will get that into a PDF file, right? And that you can sort of print out or send to somebody and so on. So first thing you should do is replicate and also extend, in the sense that somebody has calculated GDP growth rate from 2018-19. You have access to new data. You sort of extend that study, right? So that is the first thing that you should do. The second is you need to figure out. So suppose you're working on education or employment. Now, as you saw, there are multiple data sources. So do you need to stick to one data source or do you need multiple data sources? These are some subjective sort of questions that require your judgment. So as in when you go into research, and I'll encourage all of you to go into research, when you do that, you will have to ask these questions. Is my question answered by just one data set, or is it answered by bringing many data sets together? So do I use census and NSSO and RBI and ministry data sources, or do I just go deep into NSSO and answer my question? So it will depend on the question. You have to read the documents and manuals very carefully. So how did we figure out that the PLFS excludes zero income? It was given as a footnote in page 372, some random format. So you will have to read the documents very, very carefully to know what they exactly, what is it that they exactly mean, right? You have to check the numbers. So just because there's a trend of falling, farm suicide doesn't mean that this is accurate. You have to check the numbers very, very carefully. What they mean, you have to figure out if there is any corroborative evidence, right? Make good notes. So this is very important. So suppose you are doing an analysis in R, you wrote some codes, right? But you sort of forgot about it, and 2 years down the line, you are going back and revisiting, and you have no idea what it means. So if you open an R script, right, you can write the codes, but you can also write comments, right? So in any R script, yeah, so you give a hash, and then you write a comment. So you write as detailed a comment as possible, so that any random, suppose tomorrow your friend needs it, or suppose tomorrow you have published a paper and a student asks you, sir, ma'am, we have found this paper of yours very interesting, but we don't know how you have done it. Can you send us some codes? Now you should not write to them saying, I don't know where my codes are, or I can't make sense of my codes. So if you have detailed comments, anybody will be able to reproduce that research, and even you will be able to do that 2 years down the line. So you need to write very good, R scripts codes. Do transparent and reproducible research. Send your codes to people who don't know it. New students, encourage them. So that research has to be reproduced. Anybody has access to RBI data. If you give them the codes, they should be able to get exact same results, right? So reproducible research. Lastly, and this is the most important thing, what is the most important part of research is not data, not software, but the kind of analysis that you do, right? And that you will learn in your classrooms and through your research. Software will not be able to tell you that, right? So you bring all of this together, and these are the ingredients of mastering the data analysis in the lab. So I'll stop here. Thanks a lot for listening to the session. Anybody wants to ask anything, comments, questions? बहुत सारे sources हैं, most of them are free, बहुत सारे websites हैं, books हैं, all freely available. Then source पे क्या होगा? I can't tell you all the source, गलत source. My suggestion is कोई भी source use करो, it doesn't matter. But if you are replicating the result, if you are able to get, मान लो एक published paper है, जो बोल रहा है कि इंडिया का growth rate GDP growth है 5%. You are able to replicate and get 5%. You know analysis correct. Now you can बहुत सारे sources हैं. Archive there are plenty of websites. Online courses, Coursera, IQAC, Udemy. I can't say कि ये भी follow करो, but just follow any of them. And the problem ये है कि people don't take it to the work. शुरू में problem होता है, 2 दिन के बाद इससे कि नहीं हो रहा. So if you stick to any single source, that is my suggestion. that's a subjective thing. So R now is POSIT, R studio. So it has changed its name to POSIT. तो उसके बारे में research करोगे, then you will find what they have done is they have integrated the use of Python. You can continue to use R studio, but you can also integrate Python and write your things in Python and get the result. On the other hand, you use any. You want to use. It's not a question of ये करे या ये करे. It's a question of whatever you do, you become very good at it. The second thing that I want to say is if you are starting early, it's an advantage. If you are starting very late, if I am trying to convince my parents to start using Twitter, it's a problem. Right? On the other hand, if you are starting early, so it is like learning a language. अब अगर तुम पूछ रहे हो कि French सीखूं या German सीखूं, it's like that. You know any language, you know it well. The second thing is it's always good to be bilingual. अगर दोनों कर सकते हो. So for instance, I was recently writing a paper. That person is fluent in data, right? So collaborative work, it is useful to know data. अगर R भी जानते हो, so but don't start with everything. Start with one thing, know it reasonably well. You cannot know everything because these things change very fast. Once you are reasonably confident, then actually you will be able to pick up the other software very, very quickly. So yeah, that is mine. Yeah, so that you need to experience, of course, but experience in what? What do you do? So one thing that you can do is, first of all, you need to read and make. Suppose you document it. What you're looking for. Let's say code. So you need to figure out if that data set is actually measuring that. Suppose वो data set measure कर रहा है poverty in terms of income. But you don't need that because it's not comparable. So go with it's a red signal. इसका project नहीं करना because this data set is measuring poverty using income. Then you but basically it's one it is trial and error, but second you have to read the documents carefully to see कि वो variable क्या वो वही measure कर रहा है जो वो what it is saying that it is measuring, right? So these things basically. उसको हमारे इसमें basically both are dirtying your hands with the data. You play with the data, you get it wrong, and then you get it. Yeah, so bait is okay. So bait is the following. Suppose तुम्हारे क्लास में किसी ने सर्वे किया, आप लोग के क्लास में आके किसी ने सर्वे किया और बोल रहा है कि ड्यू के सारे लोगों को R और डेटा that may be wrong. Why? Because you are also a student of DU, but your sample is not representative. But suppose after strength, as a proportion of DU students, let's say is 0.5%. Now, if you weigh this sample with 0.5, the proportion that you will get then may be representative of DU. So weight बोलते हैं you also have weighted mean, right? Basically it's a similar concept. If you are making an estimation using a sample, you have to use an appropriate weight so that you can give an estimate at some so weighted mean that concept.
A very thorough yet easily comprehensible session. I'm sure we all have got an altogether refined perspective on the topic. Thank you so much, sir. I'd like to invite Manisha ma'am to extend the vote of thanks.
It is a privilege to attend this enriching workshop. On behalf of the Department of Economics, I extend a heartfelt thanks for Dr. Ishan Anand for accepting our invitation and being with us here today. Sir, your session has been truly enlightening. Further, I'd like to thank Principal Ma'am Sharma Sharma for her constant support. Sincere thanks to Convener Jyotsna Ma'am, IQAC member Renu Ma'am, and all the co-conveners, Vishakha ma'am, Palladi ma'am, Preeti ma'am, who handled the event throughout and made it a success. Furthermore, I'd like to thank all the faculty members, non-teaching staff, and all the organizing team of IQAC that who have helped in making this event a pure success. Thank you, everyone.
Once again, thank you everyone for making this event a great success. And please remain seated and sign the attendance sheet. And don't forget to fill the feedback form that will be circulated in the WhatsApp group 7 p.m. today. And the venue for tomorrow's session will be conference hall, same time, 11:30. Please don't miss.